another edition of UpFront Takes. I know it's been a while since we've recorded one, but we're back with another episode. We have Jimmy Reilly joining us. Introduce yourself to the people.
What's up, guys? I'm Jimmy Reilly. I was a teammate of Dan's at Stony Brook University. Thank you for having me, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course, great to have you on. I will say, I know I say a lot of good things about some of my former teammates, guys I coach, but truly, Jimmy, for those who haven't seen him play on the practice field, on the field itself, a very good hard worker, and really one of the best I've seen at scooping those balls at first base. And we'll be talking about first baseman later on in the show. But let's get to things now. I mean, the Mets are playing baseball. Spring training is back. And, of course, the big headlines have been the Mets going to keep Lindor. Are they going to keep Conforto long term? Your thoughts initially about how the Mets should move forward with these two?
Yeah, I mean it's great to finally see Lindor in a Mets uniform. It's great that baseball's even coming back already. And now we are in a great position where we can spend the money. I think seeing both Conforto and Lindor come sign long-term deals is a strong possibility. If I had to choose one, I think I'm going Lindor. I think he's the one of the new faces of the franchise. He's obviously got that charismatic personality to him. Mr. Smiles. You just can't not want to be his teammate. I think the energy that he's already brought to the locker room is just you can't match that. Not to bash Conforto. He's definitely a strong leader for the Mets. But I think in terms of talent and I think in terms of leadership, I think Lindor does have a slight edge over Conforto. So if it were up to me, if I were Stevie Cohen, I'm going Lindor.
Yeah, it's hard to say, it's hard to pick one because obviously both are very good. But look at the track record. I think Lindor. I mean, you hit it on the head. Who doesn't want to play with this guy? This guy is consistently keeping his teammates up. He's a no ego guy. But Conforto, I mean, he's coming off of a tremendous year. I mean, a 300 hitter. Uh, I think the Mets are going to end up pulling it off and getting them both to sign long term. But with Lindor, it's he's such an infectious personality. I compare it to sort of like David Wright or a sort of a Tom Seaver maybe, who you could look down 10 years from now and say this guy helped change the franchise. And I think you don't trade also Rosario and Jimenez and a couple other prospects if you're only going to keep them as a 1-year rental.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with that.
And speaking of, an important piece of the 2021 Mets, we got Dylan Betances coming back. He opted in to come back for this upcoming season. I wrote a number for us, an ERA over under 3. What do you think about Betances going into 2021?
I have high expectations for him. He definitely wants to win the hearts of the Mets fans, and I admire that. I appreciate that. I think to be realistic, I'm going to say it's right around 3. I'm going to take the over. I'm going to say it's going to be like right around 3.1 if I'm being realistic. I think he's going to do well. I don't think he's going to get, rocked up, but I think he's going to be right around that 3 mark. I'm going to take the over on that though.
Yeah, I went slightly over. I wrote down in my book 3.3. It's very interesting because last year we saw the huge velocity drop. Everyone knows that sometimes he's erratic with his control, but he is a very interesting piece. He's like a forgotten guy in this bullpen because you think about Diaz and May and Lugo, who's going to be injured for the first month of the season. But then you have a guy like Betances, and I sort of relate him to a guy like Familia, who a couple years ago you were looking at them one of the best relievers in baseball, but injuries and maybe age catching up to them as well. Is sort of slowing down their numbers a little bit. But again, you look at a guy like Betances, it's just hard to look at him and say that you don't want this man when he's healthy.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's definitely a force to be reckoned with. I think he's definitely going to show major signs of improvement this year. I have big expectations for him.
And he's also got an option year. I know after this season, so maybe he wants to get back into the free agent market because if he didn't get injured in that 2019 season and he put up another 100-plus strikeout season, at the time the Mets probably would have had no chance at him because the Wilpons wouldn't have wanted to spend any money on a reliever that would have probably made Liam Hendricks type of money.
Yeah, definitely.
And speaking of our bullpen situation with the Mets, we have a bunch of guys from the 2015 Mets who are trying to either revive their career or find their way back into the big leagues. We have Matt Harvey, Yoenis Cespedes, and Jerry Blevins. For those who aren't familiar, Blevins only got, I think, a handful of games with the 2015 Mets because he was struck in the arm with a line drive. But he's trying to earn a spot in spring training. And you have Matt Harvey trying to do the same thing. And Yoenis Cespedes is trying to get into a job. If you had to pick one of these three guys, which one is going to have the best revival period in 2021?
I think the case for Cespedes is out. I feel like Cespedes is he's going to be just totally washed up if he even signs. I think he's going to be out. I think Blevins has a strong chance. I think he's still definitely not in his prime, but he's at the closest to his prime out of the three. I think Matt Harvey, he's playing for a rough team now, the Orioles. I think he went downhill so fast that I think the only place for him to go is up. So I do think Harvey's going to have a decent season for his standards, but I think out of the three, I think Blevins is really going to take the cake with this one.
Yeah, Blevins has got a little bit easier because he's not injured. He could have been playing in the big leagues last season, but the Giants never took him out of the alternate site. And at least from the heart, I want to see Matt Harvey have success in his career again. Cespedes, he can go take a hike. I mean, I know today they said he looked like he was fine at the dish, but again, he can't move in the outfield, so he can only play DH. And at the moment, that knocks out half the league for him. Um, but with Jerry Blevins, I agree with your point there that he does have a good shot in this bullpen because they only have like two or three lefties. You have Zamora, you have Loop, and there really isn't much other than those guys in the bullpen. You throw Blevins in that mix. But man, Matt Harvey, I think with the Orioles, he's going to get a chance because they're going to stink. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. They're going to stink. They're going to be in the same division as the Yankees, as the Rays, as the Blue Jays, and not to mention the Red Sox aren't a bad team as well. And Harvey's going to get an opportunity. And I hope him and King Felix have a revival period as well, because those two guys, who would have thought in 2013 you would have said that King Felix and Matt Harvey would have been on the same team?
Yeah, that's not. I forgot until you mentioned. Yeah, Felix Hernandez with the O's now. Who they signed somebody else too? Who Galvis?
I think they might have signed Galvez too, but they're just plugging in pieces at this point. I mean, Chris Davis is still employed somehow. So I mean, it's Chris Davis. I mean, think about that guy. That guy's like if Jason Bay somehow took even more of a nosedive off a cliff, that's what Chris Davis would have been.
Yeah,
That's what Jason Bay would have been if he was like Chris Davis. I mean, talk
yeah.
about a fall off from there. But as we move closer towards the baseball season starting, we see a lot of change going on. We see the 7 inning games in spring training, the 7 inning doubleheaders, guys at second starting in extra innings. But if you had to change one thing, or maybe bring something new to Major League Baseball, what would you make it?
I think it's my answer is going to be a pretty common, popular answer, but I think universal DH. I think that's just going to bring so much more excitement to the game. It's going to create basically a whole new position for half the league, like you mentioned before. Cespedes, if we had a universal DH, I mean, he's playing for every single team and he's trying out for every single team instead of just half. I think having that universal DH could really bring more strategy into the game. I know the MLB is trying to toy around with strategic decisions by like you need to face a minimum batter count, stuff like that. I think having a universal DH will help bring some more strategy into the game of baseball. I think that's a possibility moving forward.
Yeah, and they're investing so much money into pitchers. I mean, Trevor Bauer's getting overpaid, but he's getting a ton of money this offseason, or he got a ton of money. You don't want a guy like Jacob DeGrom to pull something when he's just taking a swing, or Yankee fans will remember Ching-Ming Wan getting injured running the bases, and he was never the same after that. But for me, it's not necessarily an on-the-field decision. I would say taking away the local TV blackouts for MLB.TV, and then taking away that you can only watch spring training games if it's the home team. Like, think about that. We're in 2021. We have all this technology. We have a million cameras that do all these things at the World Series. But then we get to spring training, and I can't watch the Mets play the Marlins because the Mets aren't at home.
Yeah,
You know,
that's so true.
and we watched the games last year that during the pandemic that when the Mets were on the road, they didn't have SNY cameras there. They used whatever the Marlins were using or whatever the home team that they were playing were using. So it's crazy to me that at worst we can't even get that for baseball fans. I mean, talk about growing the game. That would be amazing to have.
Yeah, for sure. And like with other league, like the NFL, they still like really advertise the heck out of their like preseason games. I can't imagine it's too much different from the MLB kind of promoting and advertising their spring training games.
Yeah, and I heard rumors that Jacob DeGrom may be pitching this weekend, but the Mets' only televised game this weekend is going to be on Sunday. So if he pitches on Saturday, everyone wants to watch Jacob DeGrom pitch, but you can't watch it
Yeah,
unless you're wherever. I don't know who the Mets are playing on Saturday, but wherever, if you're not there, you can't watch it. And that's another thing with like no one's that again, no one's watching games on TV that much. People want to watch on YouTube. Like you can't. Some way to facilitate that. I mean, would be so much easier. I know you like the Dodgers too. So if you want to watch the Dodgers play, I don't know whoever's playing, but you wanted to watch Bauer the other day. If they weren't at home or it's on an MLB TV, like you're screwed over from
yeah,
watching any of your favorite players.
yeah. Nothing you can do about that. And
Yeah.
unless the
So
MLB changes that, hopefully. So
yeah, I mean, hopefully Manfred takes his head out of where to make a good decision there. But let's talk about first base. I know I mentioned that you were that you were a first baseman for us at Stony Brook, but let's go one by one. Just give a quick rundown of your list, and then I'll compare it with mine, and we'll talk about it.
all right. So yeah, exciting stuff. First baseman. So number one, I'm going my man Fred Freeman. I mean, Freddie is a beast. At the plate, on the field, defensively, offensively, the guy's a stud. I mean, he's definitely number one in my book. Number two, I'm going Goldschmidt. I think he's had a bunch of solid seasons. He's definitely a really good player. Again, defensively, offensively. He's got the number two spot for me. Anthony Rizzo is number three, just another real good ball player. I was hesitant about number four. Right now, I have Max Muncy. Last year was, definitely pretty rough for him, but I
Yeah.
think all things considered, he's got my number four spot. Um, then kind of the opposite of that, number five, I have Jose Abreu. This past season was spectacular for him. Not
Mm-hmm.
that his other seasons weren't, um, but I think just taking all that into consideration, Abreu is definitely number five for me. Um, my number six might be a little biased as a big Mets fan. I'm going Polar Bear Pete. Obviously not a huge sample size for him, but I think he's proven himself to be a great ball player. So he's number six on my list. Number seven, I'm a big fan of defense, so I went with Matt Olson. He's just a stud defensively. Offensively, he's not bad at all. I think he definitely has some room for improvement, but he's got number seven on my list. Eight is Josh Bell. I'm excited to see how he does with Washington. He had a killer last season. So I'm really curious to see how he builds upon that. Number nine, Rhys Hoskins. He had a couple great seasons, and then he had some couple not so great seasons. So I think the spotlight is on him for this upcoming season to see how he really does. And number 10 is Joey Votto. I think he's a very interesting player to say the least. Offensively, I saw this weird stat like he's only ever once popped out, I think, to first after however many years he's been in the league. I think that was just like astounding to me. So he's number 10 for me.
All right, so very interesting list, and we'll compare them after I just read through mine real quick. Our first two were lined up perfectly, Freeman and Goldie, one and two. I went with Mr. Luke Voigt at number three, Abreu coming off that MVP season four. Alonso, I have a lot of faith in. I mean, you look at the hard hit rates, the exit velocities from last year. There wasn't much that changed. He definitely stunk the first month of the year, but he was just figuring himself out. Rizzo, I went with six. Hoskins at eight. Max Muncy, Hoskins was seven. Max Muncy at eight. Eric Hosmer, I went with number 9. Some people will be surprised by that. And I'm going with Matt Olson at number 10. But you look at these lists and you look at some of these names and you look at their stats from last year and you say 190 here, 210 here. And you have like Freeman, Goldie, Voigt, and Abreu were like the only guys who had really good hitting seasons. And that shows you how tough it was in that 60 game skid. But let me ask you about one guy here. Let me ask you. I know you put Rizzo and Muncy at 3 and 4, and I had Rizzo 6, Muncy 8. So it seems like you said defense is big, which two of these guys, both of them play defense very well. But what else about these two guys said, yes, I got faith in these guys over maybe, I don't know, let's see, maybe faith over Alonso or Hoskins or even Luke Voigt himself?
I think specifically for Muncy, I think I've seen a lot of the work he's been putting in over this off season. I think he has the drive in him that, he doesn't want to be the guy. What did he bat last year? 200, if that. He doesn't want to be that guy. I've seen the workouts he's been posting, the stuff he's been posting, and I really see this drive in him. And that's not something you see in a lot of players. And I don't know. I just have a lot of confidence that Muncy's going to come back and really hit some nukes this year. I think Muncy's really going to be a big power hitter. Not that he wasn't before, but I think he's really going to lean in on that. And as far as Rizzo, I just look at Rizzo and I see like an all around, real good player. I think even on and off the field, not that, that really takes into play in top 10 first baseman, but I think Rizzo is just a really good all-around player. I think he's always looking for ways to improve his game. I know he kind of switched up his stance a lot. He makes a lot of adjustments up there. So I think he's always looking for a way to improve, even if he's playing super well, even if he's playing not so well. I think he's always looking for ways to adjust and get better.
Yeah, it's so weird too because both of us we put Abreu. I put him 4. You put him 5. It's so weird because this is a guy who won the MVP, and we're not even, throwing. But then you got a guy like Freddie Freeman who was an MVP winner as well. But what I do like here is a guy like Paul Goldschmidt. The guy to me seems very underrated. I know MLB Network had him very high as well, but the fans poll, I think the top 10 list, I don't think he even had him in the top 5, maybe even off the list. That to me, that's crazy. This guy who doesn't do anything flashy, but man, is he a good first baseman. He's a good fielder. He's a good base runner. And he is just a prototypical guy. Just imagine him and Arenado now. That is going to be a very dangerous corner duo for the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. When Arenado first got traded, I was like, that was my first thought. Him and Goldie, it's just going to be such a good punch right there. I mean, that they're going to hit some bombs.
It's even crazier that the Rockies said, here's $50 million too. We'll give you the best third baseman in baseball, and you know what? Here's an extra $50 million just to go along with it.
Yeah, that was absolutely ridiculous. I heard the Mets were tied to Arenado for a little while, and then obviously that didn't work out. But hey, we're in good shape. So
Oh, the Mets. I can't even tell you how happy I am with that offseason. If they got Arenado, I don't know who in the world they would have had to trade. But then again, they could have gotten money for Arenado. I think if they would have known that the Rockies were pushing that hard to get rid of him, give him. It seemed like all you had to do was give like J.D. Davis a couple mid-level prospects, and then you would have gotten him. But with the Mets, I mean, you can't be any more happier. I mean, we got Alonso, who I think Alonso is going to do tremendous this year. I think we saw he deleted all of his social media. We saw him pretty much be laser focused. He had a bad at bat today. I don't know if you saw it. He had a weird little strikeout today. But again, I have the utmost confidence in Pete.
yeah, same here. I know Pete's got big things for us. Like you said, he deleted all of his things. You can tell how inspired and how motivated he is to really do well this year.
Yeah, he's just an interesting personality on a team that is full of them. But before we close out the list, let me ask you: both have Freddie Freeman at 1. Do you believe that he is going to be there at the end of 2021, or is he going to be kicked off by anyone else on your list?
I think
Oh,
he's
great! We got
gonna
the phone ring. Nice.
I think he's going to be right up there. I think it's going to be a close race with a couple of these guys in here, but I think Freddie's going to take the edge. I think he's going to look to build on his previous season. I think he's kind of like Rizzo. He's kind of always looking for ways to improve. He's definitely another player who has that personality to him that you want to be surrounded by him. And I think being on the Atlanta Braves, they're definitely a great team. I think he's kind of gonna have that kind of contagious talent and personality level to him that's really gonna set him apart from all the other top tier first basemen.
Yeah, that offense too is so dynamic. He really helps them out too because you have all these right-handed hitters. You have Cunha, you have Ozuna, you have Darno, which that pains me to say that as a Mets fan, Darno. But you have all these guys now, and that's going to be one of the fun parts about this NL East too. It's going to be a crazy, crazy ride to watch. But before I give you two, do you think who do you think is going to win this NL East? I'll ask you that.
I feel like I'm going to get a lot of hate if I don't say the Mets, but I think it's going to be very close with the Mets and the Braves. I think I saw the original projections, like the Braves were going to be like fourth, and I was like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
crazy.
I'm gonna say the Mets are gonna take it by like 1 or 2 wins. I think it's gonna be extremely close, but I'm going with the Mets. I have faith in the Mets.
Yeah, I'm right around that area too. Mets maybe by a couple games, but it's going to go down to like the last week of the season. And again, whoever doesn't win these divisions, that wild card game is going to be crazy because it's either going to be the Dodgers or the Padres because one of those teams is going to win like 98 games and finish second. And then the other one's going to be between the Eastern divisions because the Central ain't going to give you anything. So it's going to be like Mets, Padres, DeGrom versus like Blake Snell in a one-game playoff. That would be fun to watch if you're a baseball fan. Not for me because I want the cushion of losing more than one game in a series, but that's for another time. So, Jimmy, 15 seconds for you. Plug anything, say anything you want. The time is all yours.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Dan. Follow J Reilly .35 on the gram. Follow Stony Brook Baseball Club on the Instagram, and that's all I got. Thank you, Dan.
Short and sweet and to the point. Yeah, give those two some love. Jimmy's got some creative content coming out with himself. So that's always great to hear. So, Jimmy, I want to thank you for coming on again, and thanks for everyone who watched Upfront Takes. Give us a follow on our social media. Be sure to give Jimmy a follow, and we'll be speaking to you all later on.